mysterious objects be proof that aliens really have abducted human beings?
We're going to perform surgery to remove foreign objects from individuals' bodies who believe that they have been abducted by aliens.
We'll scrutinize 2 of the objects at a state-of-the-art materials testing lab.
We believe that we have definitive physical evidence that the abduction phenomena is real.
If you don't make that claim, then show me some evidence.
It's a debate that has little middle ground.
Debunkers are not helpful. Their agenda is to show that this is simply not happening without having any knowledge of the subject whatsoever.
Somebody showed up with any objective data that an extraterrestrial existed and had been to Earth, we would love it.
Do these objects prove that aliens are here and that they're kidnapping people?
We don't know what they are yet. Perhaps we will find out.
Now the theory of alien abductions put to the ultimate conspiracy test.
I believe that there is compelling evidence that people are being abducted by aliens.
Their claims have made them scientific pariahs and the laughingstock of those who consider themselves serious researchers.
I have extraterrestrial children.
Anecdotal evidence is not scientific evidence.
But for 50 years, UFO believers have stuck to their guns, insisting that one day the evidence would vindicate them.
It's sort of a vicious circle because they say, well, the evidence is weak, therefore we won't get interested in it, and if they don't get interested in it, they're never going to get any stronger evidence.
What if people who say they've been abducted do have the evidence?
We believe that we have definitive physical evidence that the abduction phenomena is real.
And what do mainstream scientists have to say?
What I believe or some other scientist believes, that doesn't matter very much. What counts is what can you prove? What can you do in an experiment and show is true?
Does Dr. Roger Lear have solid evidence that aliens are here? Or are the skeptics right?
We all know people are fallible. I mean, what you think you saw might not be what you saw. We're all prone to having strange physiological and cognitive experiences, etc.
For all the controversy about UFOs, no one doubts that many of the people who say they've been abducted by aliens are sincere.
There's a lot of data out there right now, published data that shows that they're sane. The second explanation is these people must be desperate for attention. They're looking for celebrity status. And that's not the case either.
Their stories are persuasive. Nearly half of North Americans believe that alien beings are here. Tens of thousands claim they have first-hand experience, that they've been personally abducted by extraterrestrials, some many times. Many, but not all, find the experience horrifying and upsetting.
No, I don't have any fear.
However, Patsy is one who considers the aliens to be friends.
I always see this lime green aura, like on furniture, on the doorways. And in the doorway, I could see a tall, dark silhouette of somebody standing in the door. They would ask me, Patsy, will you go with me? Will you go with me? I always say yes.
Patsy claims to have been abducted by aliens numerous times.
I don't have any memory of how I leave the room, how I get out the bed, and how I get where I'm going. We all saw things, and had experiences out of...
Patsy is a member of an abductee support group. Not all of them think of aliens as friends.
There was a being standing there in front of me.
Because their backs came way up above the seats, huge broad shoulders.
Lizard-like, broad-shouldered.
Their heads were kind of round with kind of a long neck, thin neck.
Large heads, large eyes.
And scaly type of skin. And it scared me because it was horrific looking to me.
Their stories sound like science fiction, but even skeptics accept that most who claim they've been abducted are otherwise well-balanced people who believe they are eyewitnesses to extraordinary events.
Average people like everybody else having unusual experiences, all of them.
This is a global phenomenon. It is everywhere, and all the stories are the same.
To UFO researcher David Jacobs, the consistent details told by people who don't know each other is evidence that some elements of those stories must be true.
I I believe that there is compelling evidence that people are being abducted by aliens.
Jacobs is one of the top abduction researchers in the world.
Tremendous numbers of people are being abducted. Enormous numbers. Our own statistics suggested a minimum of 2% of the American people are being abducted.
People report meeting different kinds of aliens, but most abduction claims seem to follow a very similar pattern. Most have large, dark, almond-shaped eyes, small pointed chins, and long, slender fingers. They're about 4 feet tall and are called grays, the color of their skin.
I was taken into a classroom setting by a little gray. Never saw the gray's face. It called my name very sweetly, it's my real name Deborah, and I was taken in and I felt the long fingers around my hand. I could feel those long fingers, but I wouldn't look.
A typical abduction experience would be a person is removed from the normal environment.
In many cases, the interest of the aliens seem medical, and the abductees' experiences follow a specific routine.
I went into a medical room and I was getting an examination.
They're taken on board an object, a UFO, if you will. They're close removed, they're placed on a table.
I recall different kinds of equipment being passed over my body.
They're taken off the table. They are walked into another room.
Many report they are taken to a nursery with babies suspended in tanks of liquid.
Children that are partially human, almost with very little hair, sparse hair, large almond-type eyes.
They're taken back to their home, let's just say, and within seconds, they forget what has happened to them. They know something odd has happened.
The people who come to me are people who have very strong hints and clues that they've had unusual things happen to them.
I knew that probably it was the Tau Ceti beings had picked me up.
Barbara Lamb has done over 2,000 hypnotic regressions with 525 alleged abductees.
Our subconscious minds record everything that happens to us, even those things that we do not consciously remember. So they'll come with that little bit of remembrance, and we'll talk about it, and they decide that they want to do a regression and find out more details about whatever that entailed.
It seems like every time I go on a spaceship that the ETs leave a clue. Sometimes I can remember the information and other times I can't. When I can't remember, then I can go to Barbara and she can regress me and I can regain the memory.
Deeper and deeper now, bringing your memories back to what you do remember of that occasion in 1994. In doing a regression, we go down into a nice deep state of relaxation, and we have access to the memories that are stored in the subconscious mind.
I see the green face of this, looks like an insect, and I'm lying down, but I don't have any clothes on. It kind of opens a door for me through to memories that were blocked.
Though eyewitness accounts are vivid, abduction believers are not convincing mainstream science to take their claims seriously. Scientists say they've been waiting for physical proof. Now Dr. Roger Lear, a California surgeon, has come forward with a startling claim. Not every person taken by aliens has been returned only with memories.
We believe that we have a definitive physical evidence that the abduction phenomena is real. I'm a foot surgeon who has removed numerous objects from the human body, and amongst these are objects that we believe are of extraterrestrial origin.
So let's see. Here it is, here. So let's put a piece of white gauze. lot of pressure on it. It almost feels like it's being wrenched.
I believe that some of these objects could be a form of very advanced nanotechnology.
If these objects are found to be of extraterrestrial origin when put to our test, the scientific establishment will have to take the claims of the abductees seriously. Are these objects evidence that aliens are here?
And it had fractured into
Tens of thousands of people claim to have been abducted by aliens. Their eyewitness accounts are compelling and uncannily consistent. But skeptics say the abduction stories aren't real, but rather a shared delusion. The skeptics admit they can't prove that aliens are not here, but they are confident they have better explanations for the things believers cite as true evidence.
What I do for a day job is called SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. That's one thing to think that there are aliens out there, but the question is, are there aliens here? A lot of people think that there are, but I'm not among them.
According to skeptic Seth Shostak, one of the biggest problems with the idea of aliens visiting Earth is that cosmic distances are unimaginably huge. It takes light 100,000 years just to cross our home galaxy. Visitors coming to check us out would have had to have left before the human civilization was even here.
It's not that physics says you cannot go to the stars. You can go, but either you have to go at a very high speed, which is dangerous and takes a lot of energy, an enormous amount of energy, if you want to go in less than 100 years, for example, to another star. Either that, or you have to go very slowly and just be prepared for a rocket ride that's going to take maybe 100,000 years, right? So what we're doing is we're just trying to find intelligent life, not, of course, by going there or waiting for them to come here, but trying to eavesdrop on signals.
With a massive array of radio telescopes, they're listening for electronic signals from extraterrestrial civilizations.
So this is kind of our earphones on the sky. You see a whole bunch of dots here. That's just noise, cosmic noise, noise from the receivers. But pretty obvious is this dotted line down here. That's what we're looking for. That's a signal. You see it's at one spot on the radio dial. That's the kind of signal that would tell us ET's on the air. This is an artificial signal. Probably ET signal wouldn't be quite that obvious.
So what does Shostak make of the claim that aliens are coming here?
I don't think that that's happening. I believe that if it were, it wouldn't be a subject for debate and discussion. The evidence would be so overwhelming that we wouldn't have any doubts about it.
How does science explain the abduction stories reported by so many rational people? Typically, these experiences begin at night, in bed.
I can fall asleep and all of a sudden I feel this thing.
I'm there tossing and turning and rolling and getting up and laying down and moving.
Just before I fall asleep, I've had an extremely bright white light on the outside of my window move into the room.
Researchers are concluding that these experiences begin with a common but little understood sleep disorder.
We've seen a number of people that report alien abduction experiences where there is strong and convincing evidence that what they suffer from is a problem with recurrent sleep paralysis.
When we dream, our body is actually paralyzed. Sleep paralysis disorder occurs when people wake up before they stop dreaming. They can't move, and they continue to dream. The events and creatures that populate our dreams are to them experiences as real as any other.
Consciousness intrudes upon REM stage sleep. A person's fully aware of their surroundings and they're self-aware as well. As a result, they recognize their inability to move, which in itself is extraordinarily frightening. And in a large percentage of individuals, they also have visual experiences that are most often referred to as visitations.
Let's talk about some of your more colorful visitations.
Janine, who suffers from sleep paralysis disorder, is a patient of Dr. Udy.
It was actually a female, and that was the white witch, the old lady with the long white hair. She was hovering beside my bed.
The difficulty for them in understanding this as a sleep problem is that it's so real in nature.
To Dr. Udy, the intensity and reality that convinces abduction believers is just another symptom of sleep paralysis disorder.
Everything seemed real. When you're there and you've been through it, you know it was real.
Never had anything quite so real, quite so vivid ever happen to me.
It does take place. You have to understand that the person is having a visual experience. They are self-aware, they are paralyzed, and they are actually seeing something.
How people explain such experiences is the specialty of Dr. Udy's colleague, David Hufford. Hufford has heard similar experiences explained different ways all over the world. Eskimos call it ghost sickness. South Asians believe that little people called jinn visit in the night.
The same experience occurs in different cultural settings, including among people who've never heard of it. So in Southeastern Europe, when people talk about vampires, that's the explanation. When they're talking about witchcraft and attributing to witches, that's the explanation. I find this consistency more than weird. I find it truly amazing.
Nobody will believe the invasion of the saucer men.
For the last 50 years, ETs have found steady work in the entertainment industry. But before they appeared on the screen, no one reported meeting them face to face.
In the presence that comes into the room, sleep paralysis often comes through a wall. People used to always think that was a ghost.
I am transporting down with Mr. Spock, and we're delivering the medicine to Dr. Donald Corey, the governor of the colony.
But if they've ever seen Star Trek and seen Scotty beam anybody up, they have a science fiction model for it.
Those who believe they've been abducted say their experiences are recorded in their subconscious memories and later recovered. Scientists like Susan Clancy say that's not how memory works.
Memory is not a tape recorder. About 30 years of laboratory evidence consistently shows that memory is fallible. It is subject to distortion and decay, and that false memories can be fairly easily created, even false memories of very traumatic events. I'm going to be showing you some slides, and the slides are depicting a car accident.
In a series of experiments at Harvard University, Clancy shows how easy it is to implant false memories. Subjects watch pictures of a traffic accident. In one of the photos, there's a yield sign. The subject is questioned about what she saw.
Did another car pass the red Datsun while it was at the intersection with the stop sign? The last question I said, did you see the stop sign?
Actually, there is no stop sign. Clancy is trying to implant a false memory. Most subjects get all the questions right, except one.
I think I saw a stop sign.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
The studies also show that once a false memory is implanted, people are convinced it is fact.
I can feel that it was in the middle.
Skeptics say hypnosis is a tailor-made way to upgrade an imagined event into a full-blown memory, even if both hypnotist and subject are determined to be objective.
Do you feel any sense of movement, any motion or anything?
Yeah, the car moves on the track.
You get into this state where you're just kind of loose. And in this state, people tend, while they're vividly imagining what could have happened or what might have happened, to get confused between the products of their imagination and what really happened to them.
Alien abductions, real or false memories. The skeptics and believers face off as conspiracy test continues.
I saw something come in the back door, which the door is not open.
To UFO believers, science has turned a blind eye to a half-century of mounting evidence that aliens are here, and that they have a program of abduction and medical experimentation on human subjects. To skeptics, the whole notion that UFOs are real and that bug-eyed creatures have a secret plan is ridiculous. It is the product, they say, of active imaginations, sleep disorders, scientific ignorance, and popular culture. It will take a definitive test to prove the alleged abductees' claims and sway the skeptics.
I do understand why people are skeptical about this. And I used to think so too, until I began to actually work with people in some depth and realize that there is truth to this as far as I can see.
Barbara Lamb is convinced by the story she has heard, but is an eyewitness account evidence?
We're still dealing with anecdotal evidence. But anecdotal evidence is evidence.
Anecdotal evidence is not scientific evidence. Scientists want as evidence is things that other people can see, touch, feel, or smell.
And you could tell the tall one was talking.
So private experiences, no matter how powerful they feel for you when they happen or to other people, do not count from a scientific perspective.
For abduction advocates, that attitude is a failure of scientific imagination.
And if scientists were to become interested in this subject, perhaps they could figure out ways in which we could measure the anecdotal evidence or come up with other forms of evidence. But scientists will not do it. It's sort of a vicious circle because they say, well, the evidence is weak, therefore we won't get interested in it. And if they don't get interested in it, they're never going to get any stronger evidence.
The truth is, from a scientific perspective, if somebody showed up with any objective data that an extraterrestrial existed and had been to Earth, that would just be astonishing. That would be the most exciting thing in the entire world. We would love it. The problem is, there's no evidence. So we can't take something seriously until some objective evidence comes to light that says it actually exists.
In the dispute over alien abductions, believers and skeptics alike declare that one of their best weapons is Occam's razor.
All it means is that if you're given a problem, that you look for the simpler solution first, because it's more likely to be the case that that's the answer.
But while Shostak thinks the simplest answer is that people are imagining things, David Jacobs believes the consistent stories are best explained by accepting that they are true. And when confronted with people who report feeling a strange presence, paralysis, and being transported, Occam's razor has led Tom Udy to conclude their senses were deceiving them.
People have the experience of being fully awake at a time that the EEG says that they're sleeping.
But many abduction believers think Udy's conclusions are unjustified for one simple reason.
I have been very awake. As soon as 3 months ago, I was awake in an experience. It was in the middle of the day. It's the first time something happened out of my home.
The problem with sleep paralysis is this. It takes into account virtually nothing that happens within the abduction context after the person is abducted. That is simply ignored.
Could an abduction experience that lasts hours be a dream? Sleep expert Tom Udy says there's no question.
It can go from a person overestimating the time by 20 or 30 minutes to several hours. And in some cases, we've seen individuals report an overestimation in the range of 1 to 2 days.
You're going to go into a nice state of deep relaxation.
Is there a problem with reclaimed memories? Not if you're careful, says hypnotherapist Barbara Lamb.
We do have to, in regression, watch out for false memories. And that's why I think it's very careful to do a very slow, detailed, moment-by-moment process in regression.
I've seen him before on the ship.
There is no evidence to indicate that hypnosis is going to help you retrieve memories. In fact, the data shows that not only are you not better at retrieving memories with hypnosis, you're in great danger of coming to believe details of things that didn't actually happen. All of us, when we vividly imagine things, are more prone to get confused between whether it was the product of fantasy or reality. So you could imagine something and then over time to come to think it actually happened.
Clancy's critics claim she is unqualified to discuss alien abduction because she assumes in her work that all such stories are false memories.
Debunkers are not helpful. They have another agenda. Their agenda is to show that this is simply not happening without having any knowledge of the subject whatsoever.
Clancy says that for abductees, believing in the experience is more important than any alternative explanation.
Our beliefs serve some meaning. They provide explanations for us. They reduce ambiguity in our lives. So you have people that are out there actively searching for meaning, searching to try and understand things, and the alien abduction is a nice fit for them.
The holy grail of alien abduction research is actual physical evidence. Now Dr. Roger Lear, a California foot surgeon, claims he's found it. Alien implants.
You see the object, the size of it, where it came out of his hand. That's a good shot right there.
We believe that we have a definitive physical evidence that the abduction phenomena is real.
But are Dr. Lear's alleged implants proof of alien abductions? We put the evidence to a test never before conducted in one of the world's most advanced labs. Will it deliver the proof that aliens have visited? For nearly 50 years, eyewitnesses have testified to seeing UFOs. Thousands of photographs have been taken of mysterious objects in the sky. Starting in the 1960s, alien encounters have allegedly gotten much closer.
One of them clasped my hand.
The being was sitting next to me with his arms around me.
But scientists scoff at what believers consider evidence.
Their form of evidence is anecdotal and personal.
Dr. Roger Lear has told us he has convincing physical evidence, mysterious objects he's found in his patients with alleged abduction experiences.
And this once was an intact rod about 6 millimeters long, and it had fractured into 3 segments. This is the first test that will have ever been done on this object, so we don't have a clue other than it's metal encased in a biological coating.
If our test proves the material to be unusual, scientists may have to accept that they were not made on Earth. And the structure of the tiny devices, if they are devices, could reveal something about the technology and motives of the beings who made them.
I think they're more detecting physiological changes in the body, and then again they could be also devices for detecting the advancement of genetic changes in our bodies. We can see it moving around. The first sample that we're testing came from the arm of an abductee.
That alleged abductee was Tim Cullen, a cement contractor from Yuma, Colorado.
My first encounter was the one where I was implanted.
Both he and his wife had 1 or 2 experiences.
When we did encounter the UFO and spotted it, and the events of the night started to happen, it was an awesome realization.
20 years after the Cullens saw the UFO, an X-ray revealed a foreign object in Tim's arm. Cullen believes it's been transmitting medical information about him to alien spacecraft, a practice Dr. Lear theorizes may be a link to an alien project to modify the human race.
I feel pretty confident that we have a piece of metal that is not from this Earth.
Seth Shostak of SETI has heard stories of alien implants before. He remains skeptical.
Okay, here are my choices. Aliens are putting funny rocks in people, or people are putting funny rocks in themselves, right? And given those two things, I would say I would opt for the more prosaic explanation. But if you think that you have an alien implant, well, take that implant to the lab. Let's take a look at it.
And that's exactly what we're doing. Dr. Lear has brought the Cullen object and a second one he removed from the toe of a California nurse to one of the most advanced labs of its kind in the world, the Materials Science Lab at the University of Toronto. If Dr. Lear's objects prove to contain materials or technology not available on Earth, his discovery will be one of the greatest scientific coups of all time. Department Chair Dr. Doug Perovich will oversee tests to determine if the objects Dr. Lear has extracted from his patients could be of extraterrestrial origin.
Looking at materials, be they being terrestrial versus extraterrestrial, a lot of the evidence, I'd say, would be the thermal history or thermomechanical history of that component. It's hard to tell by looking at it what class of material is. I mean, it's fairly dense, as you would see in materials that are metals or ceramics. I will use a number of tools to get inside of here and see what makes this up.
The first step is to look at the composition and structure of the object or tiny device removed from Tim Cullen's arm. If it was created by alien technology, it might contain isotopes not found in earthly materials.
Dr. Lear, we're going to start with testing in this instrument, which is a field emission scanning electron microscope, which will give us a fingerprint on the elements that are in there.
Any transmitting device is likely to have telltale signs of its purpose. Circuitry, perhaps some kind of sensing device, pathways for information. The first test is to determine what the sample is made of.
There seems to be something in the bottom of those depressions. It's possible that it's biological tissue, since that will not conduct as well as the sample can.
The electron microscope can magnify up to 500,000 times.
That is unbelievable.
You can see the roughness on the surface in general. It's not smooth at these magnifications, although it may look relatively smooth by eye.
At first glance, the object does not seem to be a machine. There is no sign of a design or pattern. Still, there are many unknowns.
We have some spherical structures that appear to be hollow. We don't know what it is as yet.
But Dr. Lear sees interesting patterns.
What we're looking at here are interesting structures seen through the electron microscope. We don't know what they are yet, and with more testing, perhaps we will find out.
In addition to the structure, the microscope can detect the chemical makeup of the object.
As you can see, there's a whole series of peaks. I mean, that's quite complicated. Could we have brought something easier to look at?
Next time.
All right. So you see we have iron, we have chlorine, aluminum, silicon.
After a thorough examination of the structure and chemical composition of Dr. Lear's first example, Dr. Doug Perovich reaches a conclusion.
A common type of low to medium carbon steel that you would find in materials like tools that need to be quite hard.
In the quest for incontrovertible proof that aliens are here, the sample from Tim Cullen's arm doesn't make the cut. It looks to be a piece of a tool, the kind a contractor like Cullen would work with every day.
Material with.
But there's a second object to test, the one from the California nurse.
How does this differ from the first sample?
It appears to be very different from the first. If there's any proof that aliens have abducted people, it will have to come from the second of Dr. Lear's objects.
Well, I'm anxious to see whether we come up with the same formula here.
So am I.
No, it's certainly not the same.
The nurse from whom Dr. Lear removed the second object says she's been abducted many times. Will the object found inside her body confirm her claims? Next on Conspiracy Test. Material Science Lab of Canada's University of Toronto, a remarkable experiment is being conducted. Dr. Roger Lear, a California surgeon, has come here with two objects he believes may have been implanted in ordinary Americans by alien kidnappers.
It's fairly dense, as you would see in materials that are metals or ceramics, and has a very dark...
He is a man of science, and he hopes science will prove him right.
We've dissected out a very small piece of metal from this biological cocoon.
Dr. Lear believes the structure and composition of the objects may prove an astonishing thesis. Aliens are in the midst of a long-term program to monitor and possibly change the human race. Using U of T's electron microscope and spectrometer, we have exposed the sample taken from the arm of Colorado contractor Tim Cullen to be a fragment of a steel tool. Dr. Lear's hope of scientific vindication now rests on the second of his samples, an object he removed from the toe of a California nurse.
With evidence of calcium phosphate. It's interesting how we have this sharply defined feature with this sort of casing of a more random, rough surface.
Department Chair Dr. Doug Perovich has been asked to determine if Dr. Lear's objects could be of extraterrestrial origin.
Between what's unusual here is how straight these boundaries are. I find that quite interesting.
If the suspected implant was not made on Earth, a mass spectrometer will reveal isotopes not commonly found on this planet.
How can we tell if it is a hole or whether it's a density?
We can actually make comparisons between terrestrial and extraterrestrial signatures. And so with this today, it'll be one of the tests to help us see whether there's a true terrestrial makeup to this material or whether there's something unusual about it.
Well, that should be interesting.
It seems that there's a center layer sandwiched between two outer layers.
The second sample has an obvious organized structure.
Roger, this sample intrigues me. I'm quite interested in this sharp interface, and I need to spend a bit more time and collect some of the remaining data to get a much more definitive answer on the origin of this metallic object.
It's uncoated.
Although it is steel, it is a rare type.
When I first saw the results, and I wondered whether this was just a piece of matter that someone may have stepped on, like a piece of a nail. You know, looking at this microstructure now, it's not the sort of typical slowly cooled microstructure you see of most steels.
Is there a way to determine if this is man-made steel, the temperature at which the steel was formed?
Yeah, we can work backwards from the microstructure and lay out the thermal history of how it was processed.
Most terrestrial steels are cooled slowly in the manufacturing process. This one was not.
They've found it's a kind of jaggedy type of microstructure that's indicative of a fast cooling rate.
The question remains, could this object have been manufactured in outer space?
There were a lot of depressions in there.
In one of the world's most sophisticated materials science labs at the University of Toronto, Department Chair Dr. Doug Perovich is deep in the process of examining the first of two objects believed to be alien implants. The objects were taken out of the bodies of people who claim to have had abduction experiences by California foot surgeon Dr. Roger Lear and put to our test. Dr. Lear hopes that he will prove his theory that aliens are monitoring human beings and meddling with their DNA.
Now, what's interesting here is that these sort of jagged-looking features in the microstructure are also seen in meteorites. Whether there's a connection there, I don't know as yet.
But when all the information is gathered and interpreted, the finding Dr. Lear is hoping for is not here.
The second sample had a structure that had this sort of three-layer arrangement that looks reminiscent of what you see in knives, with a hard core and a softer outer core of steel.
The layering of different strengths of steel is a characteristic feature of what is called Damascus steel. Knives made from it are expensive, but very much a product of this planet. How a jagged piece of knife-like steel ended up in a nurse's toe is anyone's guess, but aliens putting it there would not pass Occam's simplicity test.
Lots of calcium phosphate.
Disappointed today, Dr. Lear is confident that another day or another lab might prove him right.
The best of scientists have different theories and can look at things differently. So if we have one scientific endeavor which shows that there's no anomalies, number one, that doesn't absolutely 100% definitively prove that there are no anomalies, because somebody else might find something else.
Regardless of what scientists say, people who believe that they've been abducted will continue to insist that aliens are here and that they have a purpose.
There is an overall theme that suggests something catastrophic happening to the planet, and that a number of persons may be prepared in a variety of ways to assist.
Where they will be found, what their civilization will be like, and what sort of beings they may be will also be a matter of contention. The alleged abductees say they know a lot about aliens from having met them. They report encounters with many different types. Aside from the Greys, there are reptoids, Pleiadians, and about a dozen others. Even Bigfoot, some UFOologists contend, is not really a mysterious hominid. They call them Sasquatches and maintain they were brought here from outer space.
I think there are many different groups of extraterrestrials who visit the Earth and visit people. And it seems like each one of those groups has their own agenda.
But skeptics believe that what aliens are reported to look like and what their purposes are reflect our own hopes and fears.
There were sort of these humanoid robot type aliens in the 1950s. In the 60s, there were these Scandinavian aliens that were very sort of tall and slender with white robes and long blonde hair. And then in the 70s, they became kind of short and skinny, usually about 5 feet tall, grayish, greenish, big eyes, inverted teardrop head. The appearance conforms to what society expects the aliens are going to look like.
Like their appearance, their goals have changed over time.
It used to be, I would say in the 70s and 80s, more likely to be that the aliens were here hell-bent on destroying us.
Today, many believe aliens look just like us because they're using the sperm and eggs of people they've taken to create hybrids who can blend into human society.
If this is the case, then the ultimate question is, why would they want to do that? And that is a question that needs to be answered. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I did.
I think we'll find people with, very accelerated thought patterns, incredibly intelligent and have very creative solutions to our problems here on Earth, just sort of walking among us and making things better on Earth.
There is an overall theme, and absolutely in my case, that suggests something catastrophic happening to the planet, and that a number of persons may be prepared in a variety of ways to assist.
The focus of this is that the Earth is about to go through a really big transition, and hopefully we're going to move into a cleaner environment and a more peaceful world. Hopefully we're going to end up as more evolved, conscious, spiritual, loving beings.
If one is to believe that aliens are abducting human beings, we must first grant that aliens have physically arrived on this planet. This alone is a controversial assertion that has very little respect in the scientific community. However, one highly respected scientist is vocal in his belief that alien craft have arrived on Earth.
Where the rubber meets the road is when you actually go out and investigate, talk to witnesses yourself.
A naval physicist, Bruce Maccabee, has been active in UFO research since the 1960s.
I've concluded that UFOs really are here. And the witnesses that I talked to didn't turn out to be the town drunks or people who were mentally challenged or whatever. They turned out to be rather credible.
But Maccabee does not rely exclusively on eyewitness testimony. He feels that the most believable evidence that UFOs have arrived is a set of photos taken in McMinnville, Oregon. These photos, taken by farmers Paul and Evelyn Trent on May 11, 1950, are some of the most contested UFO evidence in history. Maccabee has analyzed these photos intensely and considers them the most definitive evidence ever recorded.
The image at the bottom of this has some brightness to it. It's darker than the surrounding sky, but it's got some brightness to it as compared to underneath the tank, which is very dark down in here.
His analysis of the shadows helps determine whether the object in the photo is small and close, like a hubcap hanging from a wire, or far away, like an airborne craft.
I concluded that the McMinnville photos were real based on my analysis of the photos. They really did see some strange object flying by with a definite shape and took photos of it. To me, the simplest explanation is that there are extraterrestrials or creatures from out there coming here.
I mean, I was completely blocked. I've been trying to remember, what was it? After I saw that green, I couldn't remember the rest, and I knew that the Tau Cetis had taken me to their planet, and I couldn't ever see what was on the planet. All I could see was it's like a square of green. That's all I could remember, for the last 12 years. And Barbara sort of took me through that blockage, got me through to the other side where I could start to remember it. Even though I think there's more, I still couldn't remember. You kind of have to be there to believe it, I know they sound totally outrageous and some of the things are, inexplicable. All I can say was, I was there, I experienced it, and if you'd been there too, you would too. And I can totally understand people not believing it because it sounds outrageous, I know.
I mean, to realize that we were not alone in the universe, that there was other intelligent life out here besides humankind.
I saw the spherical shape, lights, many lights, and it was large, came right in front of our car and went, I believe, under some electrical wires over a hill, and I experienced fear. It hasn't gone away, and we're here, and now I'm anxious to find out the analysis of exactly what it is.
We'll adjust the brightness and contrast a little bit.
It's like looking at a crater on one of the planets. There's two ways you can perceive it.
So now looking at this, I can tell you right off the bat that the microstructure is indicative of a steel that's been solidified relatively quickly. And some of the microstructural features are fingerprints of thermal history of this steel. Now, what's interesting here is that some of the microstructural features, something we call Woodmanstadt ferrite, these sort of jagged looking features in the microstructure are also seen in meteorites. So whether there's a connection there, I don't know as yet. We need to do chemical analysis to find out the carbon content